There's this moment at the end of Rebels. Maul is dying, Obi-Wan is holding him, and the last thing Maul says, after surviving being cut in half, after Lotho Minor, after the Shadow Collective, after Mandalore, after all of it, is,
"He will avenge us."
Not him, us. Why does that hit so hard? Because after 30 years of surviving, of building something from the wreckage Sidious left him, he still dies as a supporting character in someone else's story. Not the main character, not even in his own story. And the question I keep coming back to is, why does that keep happening? Canon, legends, doesn't matter. Every version of Maul ends up in the same place, discarded, alone, still defined by the man who made him. Because it wasn't bad writing, it wasn't bad luck. Sidious built him that way. Right before The Phantom Menace, and I mean weeks before the invasion of Naboo, there's a novel called Darth Maul Shadowhunter by Michael Reeves, and it does something the films never could. It puts you inside Maul's world, and one of the first things Reeves reaches for, describing Maul from the outside looking in, is this word Myrmidon. Not apprentice, not heir, Myrmidon. In Greek mythology, Myrmidons were the soldiers of Achilles. What made them different from every other army in that war wasn't skill. It was that they had no will of their own. They didn't question. They didn't hesitate. They existed to execute the orders of one man, and that was their entire purpose. That's the word Reeves chose for Maul. Before he continued, it was impossible even to conceive of a time when he had not been in thrall to Darth Sidious. Not loyalty, thrall. And that difference matters more than it looks. Because loyalty means somewhere back there was a choice. Thrall means the choice was made before Maul was old enough to know it was being made for him. And here's what that process actually looked like. There's the Iridonia passage. Maul thinks about his homeworld, which is Iridonian legends, not Dathomir. And Reeves writes that knowing he came from Iridonia was like knowing that the atoms composing his body were born in the primordial galactic furnaces that forged the stars. The knowledge was interesting in a remote, academic way, but no more than that. No connection, not buried connection, not pain he's pushing down, just absence. Because Sidious didn't suppress Maul's identity, he replaced it. Before Maul had the language for what was being taken, pain became the substitute. He had soon learned to think of pain as his teacher. From fearing it, he had actually come to welcome it, because he knew it would test his willpower and his courage. That's not discipline, that's engineering. Sidious took a child who had no framework yet for who he was and filled every available space with conditioning. Pain is good, suffering is growth, the mission is everything. And what's left when you do that before someone can resist it isn't an apprentice, it's an instrument that has learned to tune itself. By the time Maul is old enough to question any of it, the questioning faculty is gone. So by the time Shadowhunter opens, Maul is on Coruscant taking care of loose ends Sidious can't officially touch before the invasion launches. And Maul looks out at the trillions of people around him and thinks he owed Darth Sidious everything. Not everything he had, everything he was. Now, there's another piece of this that changes how you read every single one of those scenes. James Luceno's Darth Plagueis, written from inside Sidious's own mind years before any of this plays out. He has Sidious say, "I have Maul to do what the risk of discovery might not allow me to do." And that's it. That's the whole thing. But sit with what's actually happening in that moment. Sidious isn't saying this to an enemy. He's saying it to Plagueis, his own master, the man who taught him everything. He's not hiding it. He's not embarrassed by it. He's just stating the operational structure of his apprentice, out loud, in a private room, like you'd explain a tool to someone who asked why you keep a particular blade on your belt. Maul is spending his entire existence believing he's the blade of the future Sith Order. He has trained his entire life for it. He would die for it. And Sidious is in a room with Plagueis, the most powerful Sith alive, describing him as a workaround, a way to stay deniable, an asset that lets the real players operate without exposure. And Maul has no idea, because why would he? The part of him that could step back and ask, wait, what am I actually for? Was conditioned out before he had words for the question. There's a scene in Saboteur, Maul on a covert mission to Dorvala, manipulating rival mining companies into destroying each other. And at the end, Sidious picks up Maul's double-bladed lightsaber, holds it, looks at it, and calls it an exquisite weapon. then hands it back. He's standing in front of the person who built it, who wields it, who is it. And Maul says, "My master, I live to serve you." He didn't catch it. He can't. He's a weapon that can't recognize itself in a metaphor. And that's exactly what gets deployed. Maul performs flawlessly, tracks the Jedi, fights Qui-Gon to a draw in the Tatooine desert, draws Obi-Wan out on Naboo, gets cut in half, and Sidious processes that loss without grief, because losing a weapon isn't the same as losing someone. You note the gap in the armory and move on. There's a scene in the Age of Republic comic that I think is the most revealing thing ever written about Maul, and almost nobody talks about it. He and Sidious are on Malachor, a great place for Sith training, and Maul breathes the ashes of the long-dead Sith buried there, and the Force gives him a vision. In the vision, he's a Jedi. He saves a fellow Zabrak from a creature and gets invited to dinner. The Zabraks thank him, idolize the Jedi who protected them, and Maul sits at that table, welcomed, wanted, seen as something other than a weapon, and he can't hold it. He's disgusted, not by them, by the version of himself they're looking at. He becomes a Sith inside the vision and kills every one of them. As he does, he says, "No, no, this cannot be what I was meant to see." He doesn't say he won't be this. He says it cannot be what he was meant to see, present tense, like the vision itself is malfunctioning, like there's been an error. The Force handed him an alternative self, showed him a version that belonged somewhere, that was wanted for something other than what he could do to enemies, and his conditioning was so total, so foundational, that he couldn't sustain it for a single meal inside his own subconscious. After the vision ends, Sidious praises him, and Maul walks away, understanding that it will take more than rage and emotion to destroy the Jedi. He drew exactly the wrong lesson, because the vision wasn't about the Jedi. It was about him, a weapon that was offered an exit and deleted it from its own mind. And here's where Canon says the quiet part out loud. This isn't some comic that was just thrown together. Son of Dathomir was Dave Filoni's own unproduced Clone Wars scripts. This was always the plan. In issue 1, Sidious tells Dooku, "Maul came to me as a child, a not-so-appreciated gift from Mother Talzin." A not-so-appreciated gift. He didn't seek Maul out. He didn't run trials. Talzin handed him a child, and Sidious found him workable, eventually. But now we need to talk about what Maul built in between, because in Clone Wars, he doesn't just survive, he actually becomes something. The Shadow Collective, Death Watch, the Pikes, Black Sun, the Mandalorian government, a real power base. He takes Mandalore, sits on the throne. Think about what that actually required. He aligned Death Watch with the Mandalorian throne without a single Sith resource, brought the Pikes, Black Sun, and the Hutt clans under one structure, built a criminal intelligence network that could move against Republic interests without triggering Republic response. He did it methodically, without Sidious's help, without Sidious's knowledge, and for a moment, it genuinely looked like the conditioning had failed, like something had survived in there that was actually his. And then Sidious comes personally. Not Dooku, not Grievous, not a bounty hunter. Sidious travels to Mandalore himself, walks into that throne room, and dismantles everything Maul built, beats him into the floor, and when Maul is broken enough to ask why he's being kept alive, because execution is the only logic he has left, Sidious says, "You have become a rival." But he doesn't kill him, he keeps him alive, because Talzin is still out there, and Maul is the only bait she'll come for. That's it. The Shadow Collective, Death Watch, Mandalore, everything Maul bled for was bait. Sidious was never trying to stop him, he was waiting for Maul to draw Talzin out into the open. And then he tells Dooku plain as day, "In the end, we shall use Maul to lead us to Talzin." Everything Maul thought he was building, Sidious saw it as a leash, and Talzin was the one he actually wanted. Talzin must be coaxed into the light before she is permanently snuffed out. That's not a reading, that's Palpatine saying it out loud. And then issue 4 plays it out exactly the way it was always going to. Talzin has possessed Dooku. She's standing inside Sidious's inner circle, closer to killing him than she's ever been. And then Grievous arrives, and the last thing Maul sees is Grievous running his mother through with a lightsaber while Sidious watches. And then his ship leaves, because the weapon was fired, it goes back in the holster. His mother, the one person in either timeline who had any claim on wanting him, who handed him to Sidious and spent decades trying to get something back from that transaction. She dies while he watches, powerless, because Sidious designed it this way from the beginning. She was always the target. Maul was always how you got there. Maul's Shadow Lord is doing something worth your time. He's trying to build something from the wreckage, and it's genuinely compelling. Go watch it. But it can't undo what Palpatine confirmed in his own words. And here's the thing about Maul's survival in canon that I don't think gets talked about enough. It doesn't change the thesis. It deepens it. Legends killed him on Naboo and left it there, clean, a weapon spent. And there's something honest in that. Legends isn't trying to rehabilitate him or ask what he might have become, because the text already answered that question. He was what he was built to be. He served his function. The story didn't linger on his absence because the story was never actually about him to begin with. Canon kept him alive, gave him decades more story, let him build an empire, and he still ended up alone on Malachor, chasing the ghost of a man who defeated him 30 years earlier. Because Sidious's conditioning didn't just shape what Maul did, it shaped what Maul needed. And what he needed, a purpose, an enemy, a reason to exist, that was chosen for him before he had a say. The survival didn't free him, it just made the cage bigger and gave him more room to discover he couldn't leave. He dies, still a supporting character in someone else's story. Both timelines, same ending. Because the thing he actually needed, a self, an identity, a reason that was genuinely his, was gone before he had words for it. And Reeves put it in one line. Maul on Coruscant, certain of exactly one thing. He owed Darth Sidious everything. He believed it completely. He was built to believe it completely. A weapon that never knew it was a weapon. May the dark side be with you.